Hello and welcome to some Grub with Mark Russell. Today I'm going to be cooking this and that called Braai. So I'm going to start the journey into this underworld by digging a hole. I'm measuring 2 spade widths wide, and then I'm going to dig a hole about a spade length deep. I'm going to have layers of coals and sand as can be seen in the video. So I've got to make sure the hole's deep enough. There's the sticky fleece for the reference. So I'm going to get a fire started, and then it should take about half an hour to be ready. In the meantime, I'm going to prepare the meat. This is the piece of meat. It is a ribeye, a deboned piece of ribeye. It's 1.8 kilograms. It's very moist when it comes out of the packaging, so I'm going to pat it down with roller towel, get all the moisture off the surface. The nice thing about a ribeye is it's quite like these streaks of fat, so the meat is probably going to stay quite moist while I cook it. I'm going to wrap it in roller towel just to make sure it is. I'm just going to make sure it is dried on the surface while I prepare the basting. I'm going to prepare 100 grams of butter. I've got rosemary, thyme, garlic, onion, and soy sauce, and I'll add red wine later. I'm going to de-stalk the thyme sprigs and the same with the rosemary into the butter. I've melted the butter, and 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. Then I'm going to transfer the herbs and the butter into a mixing jar. I've got this jug here that I use. I'm going to blend it all together. There we go, nice and buttery. You can see it's a lovely rich brown texture because of the soy sauce. I'm going to cut a few onion rings, and I'm going to lay these down. As you'll see later, I'm going to lay these down underneath the meat just to make sure it doesn't burn on the bottom. Right, I'm going to be using 5 cloves of garlic. I'm going to put them in whole with the meat. I'm not going to cut them up for fine meat. I just want the flavors to infuse into the meat, so a lot of this is going to be chunks. You don't need to cut much fine. I'm putting the onions on a sheet of heavy tin foil. I realize my basting butter has gone a bit hard, so I've heated up the wine and I'm adding it in to soften the butter again. Once that's ready, I'm taking off the roller towel from the meat. I'm going to generously sprinkle the meat with salt and pepper. You can actually, in hindsight, I should have maybe put a little bit more salt, just for reference. You can be very generous with the salt. It is a big piece of meat. Generously adding the pepper. I'm using the edge of the meat to pick up the rest of the salt and the pepper on the board. Now I'm going about my basting. I've got onions on the sheet of tin foil that I'm going to use. I'm going to generously baste them. This is going to help infuse the flavors into the meat. I'm not worried about using whole rosemary and thyme around the meat at all. So generously baste the top. I'm going to delicately flip it over, baste the other side, and make sure all the nooks and crannies are basted and moist. And I'm going to wrap it like a present. So I'm going to fold the ends over the tin foil and then make sure it's all nice and tight, and then wrap it up. And I'm going to add a second sheet of tin foil to this just to make sure like nothing breaks and the meat doesn't get full of ash. Also, I have to dig this out of the hole, so I need to make sure there's at least some protection. And it's going to be so hot in the hole, it doesn't really matter how much tin foil there is. By now the fire is ready. I'm going to set aside half the coals outside the fire. I test the temperature. It still feels a little bit hot. Now the whole idea is you want to have some ground between the hot coals and the meat, otherwise it will burn. The whole point of this digging a hole is the ground should be hot, not so much the coal. This coal's got to heat the ground. The ground will warm up the meat and it will act as like a very tight oven. I'm going to put now coals around the sides. There we go, coals around the sides, and I'm going to make sure there's sand in between, and I'm going to gently cover the meat. My one concern is the soil seems a bit moist because we had rain. I was worried the soil was going to cool down the fire, but anyway, I had to proceed ahead. You never know with these things. So I've now covered everything, and there's nothing more to do now but wait for 5 hours. So I put the meat on at 12 o'clock. It's now 3 in the afternoon. I'm now going to prepare a potato bake that I'm going to cook on the fire above the meat. The meat should be done at about 5 o'clock given the 5 hours. So I've got now 2 hours to get a potato bake done and the broccoli that I'm going to do later. So what I'm doing now is I'm slicing potatoes into nice thin slices, and then I'm going to layer starting from the bottom potato, then I'm going to put in mushrooms, then I've got a packet of cream mushroom soup, and I'm going to add it into a cup, and then I'm going to add 250 milliliters of hot water, starting with half of it, so I can get the soup dissolved, and then I'll add the other half later. And I'm also adding in a teaspoon of garlic. Once I feel it's all dissolved, I'm going to add about a third of the sauce into the bread tin, and then I'm going to repeat this process until I've used all the potato and all the mushrooms and the mushroom sauce. There we go, all ready. Now the last thing to do is add pepper and salt, and then finally I'm going to give it an Italian flavor with some Italian herbs from Robertson's. I've made another fire. I'm going to set aside some coals. I've got a Mega Master cast iron camping oven that I'm going to put on a bed of coals to the side. I'm going to make sure it's all nice and level. Once it's come up to temperature, I'm then going to add the potato bake into the oven. It should be very hot now, and I'm going to stick on the lid. I'm going to add coals to the top to make sure that there's universal heat all around. In the end, I'm going to be adding cheese, so I want the top to be hot so the cheese can melt and grill. So after 30 minutes, I'm going to remove the lid, which you can see is bubbling away nicely, looking delicious. And I'm going to add about 100 grams of Gouda cheese to the top. Once I've added the cheese, I'm going to put the lid back on and just make sure the top of the lid is very hot. I want the cheese to melt and brown. Right, now for the last element of this dish, I need some green. So I'm putting my cast iron pan on the fire, and with some olive oil, a generous amount of olive oil, and then I've got Tenderstem Broccoli, which I'm going to add to the pan once this really hot. I leave the pan on for about 10 minutes to make sure it's really hot. and this is on the rest of the coals. And I'm going to leave the broccoli on for about 2-3 minutes aside until you start to see them go brown, and then I'm going to remove them. Once I've removed the broccoli, I'm going to add, only afterwards, I'm going to add some salt and pepper, and this is going to give awesome explosions of flavor. Alright, now it's time to dig up our little treasure. As you can see, it is very hot inside there because it's gone all powdery. So now begins the delicate process of digging out the piece of meat without breaking the tin foil. So upon looking at this, I see some of the soil around the actual meat is quite moist, which makes me a bit worried that a lot of the juices have escaped. Worried it's a little bit overcooked. So I'm literally going to treat this like a fossil. I'm going to sort of brush and tease around the sides of the tin foil until I feel that it is loose enough. Once I feel it is loose enough, I'm going to grab the oven mitts and I'm going to gently pull the piece of meat out of the ground.
Here we go. It smells delicious. This is next day Mark Russell here. I've done the ribeye and I've done the potato bake and the Tenderstem Broccoli. Thought I'd give you a bit of a feedback here. As you well know, it was an experiment of mine. I've never done this myself before. Decided to give it a go and give you guys some feedback. So, first off, it was a delicious piece of meat, a 1.8 kilogram piece of ribeye. I got the ribeye from Meat the Butcher, which is a local butcher near me in Kenilworth, Cape Town. If you're somehow in that area, I strongly recommend going to see what he's got. He does like great cuts of meat. He gets really good quality meat. Also quite experimental. Like I know he does a feta jalapeno pork sausage, which is mwah. He does like a beer-based pork sausage. The things I learned from today, the things I learned from yesterday, is the ribeye is a great piece of meat. It's so tender. It's like a full, juicy piece of meat. However, I don't think it's ideal for putting in the ground because you can't monitor it. Like ribeye needs to be cooked to a particular temperature on the inside, and with it being in the ground, it's obviously impossible to monitor. And it's kind of just a work of art to, when you reveal it out of the ground, that's what you get. It was very juicy. It was wonderfully juicy, but the inside was overcooked. So I left it in there either too long or the heat was a bit too much. And so it cooked right through. Ideally what you want it to be, you still want it to be sort of like medium rare on the inside. It was well done throughout. It wasn't overcooked to the point where it was dry, so it was still quite tasty. The juices that came out were the aromas that came out, the rosemary and the thyme and everything, it was very aromatic. Next time maybe I'll put more salt. Could maybe have done with a little bit more salt. And it was a big piece of meat. Yeah, so next time I do that kind of roast, so the next time I have like a piece of ribeye to roast like that, I'll probably just do it in the oven. Yesterday was for Heritage Day, so it was all about, our heritage. And back in the day, they used to just cook pieces of meat in the ground. They used to take like a duck or a pheasant or something. They used to take like a guinea fowl and cover it in mud, like thick clay mud. Make a fire in the ground, chuck the whole bird in there. And then when you pull off the mud, like the mud goes, then after the guinea fowl is in the ground, the mud sort of hardens and solidifies, almost like in a pottery kind of way. And then you break it and you peel the clay off, and it actually pulls all the feathers with it as well. And that's how they used to defeather the guinea fowl as well. And then they used to eat it like on their travels. So this is an homage to that. So this was my first go at trying it out. Overall, I think it was a success. I think unfortunately, it was overcooked, so I'll give myself like a 6-7 out of 10. But I think if it was a different piece of meat, say if it was a piece of leg of lamb, that kind of generally keeps a lot of its moisture, and it doesn't matter because I think it didn't overcook. It didn't drastically overcook, but it overcooked slightly. So the inside was very cooked, but you could see in the video, it was very juicy still. And the lamb would go well with that, or a different cut of beef, like a fattier cut of beef. The inside of the ribeye, it's like all muscle, so you kind of want to maintain the moisture in that meat. The potato bake was delicious. That's right. Like if you want to copy me, if you want to copy that straight out of the video, I strongly recommend it. Just maybe it looked like it was too little soup that I put in, but it ended up working out perfectly because the mushrooms release a lot of moisture, and so did the potatoes. So like the moisture just mixes with that soup mix, and then it rises. And I think I got that pretty spot on. The cheese grilled nicely, and then quite easy. The Tenderstem Broccoli is always amazing to put with a bit of olive oil. Braise it in a cast iron pan or skillet for 2-3 minutes per side, and then salt and pepper afterwards. It is actually even amazing for a snack. It's something my husband and I get from Tap Room in Salt River in Cape Town. That's what they used to do. So they use like a truffle oil. We've now adopted that at home, and it is amazing. I'd rather go there. They know how to do it properly. So I'll give the potato bake about an 8 out of 10. It was brilliantly cooked. The presentation could have looked a bit better. The Tenderstem Broccoli is a solid 7-8 out of 10 as well, because of the ease of doing it. I think maybe next time I'll leave it in the pan a little bit longer to char. I didn't really get a smoky flavor, but that went pretty well. And then, the meat. I think the cut of meat was not the right choice, but I think given it was any kind of another type of meat with the same net weight, I think it would have been like an 8-9 out of 10. But I'll give myself a 6.5. All right. Thanks for watching.